So now we have John McLaughlin on the line. John most recently sent a memo to the President of the United States detailing out the skewed media polls. And John, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I can't wait to dive right in.
Mike, it's a pleasure to be with you. So, the skewed media polls. It's like, for those of us who were with the president in the first campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and to be witnessing what the national media is doing with their polling once again, it's like deja vu all over again. Except this time, 4 years ago, they didn't think we could win. And this time, afraid we're going to win. So they're doubling down on the same bad polls.
Mm-hmm.
Just let me give you a little facts here. I mean, the polls in that memo that the president retweeted, there was a poll that NBC News did that had only 26% Republicans. There was a poll the following day CNN did, only 25% Republican. What's relevant about that is election day in 2016, we were 33% of the vote to 37% Democrat. If you run Republicans down 7 or 8 points, you're running the president down 7 or 8 points because he gets over 90% of the vote from Republicans.
Right.
So they're doing this intentionally, and they're doing surveys of adults. There's over 240 million adults who are eligible to vote in the United States, and there's 160 million registered voters. We had a record turnout in 2016, which was part of our strategy to bring new voters out. It was 139 million.
Right.
In effect, they're polling tens of millions of people who aren't going to vote. Let me give you their track record from 2016.
Please do.
If you go to the Real Clear Politics website, between May and Election Day of 2016, there's 173 major media polls that had Hillary winning in virtually all of them except for 13. You had Trump given only 164 electoral votes at that time. We got 306.
Mm-hmm.
Right before the election in October, NBC, October 13th, Clinton up 11 points.
Yep.
Boston College, another one of those schools that should focus on football and basketball, October 14th, Clinton up 10 points. Monmouth College, October 16th, Clinton up 12. October 23rd, ABC, Clinton up 12. October 24th, AP, Clinton up 14. They were saying there was no way we could win. There was an electoral lock election day, 538 in the New York Times, said there was 85% chance of Hillary going to win. And by the way, they called me one of the worst pollsters. I'm like, what are they talking about on election day? They got it wrong. The other polls had losing. I was the one saying we could win with other people in the Trump campaign. So they're doubling down on these bad polls, trying to sandbag our people and our voters so that we don't vote. And by the way, let me give you a really egregious example of a bad poll. Fox News put out a series of battleground state polls last week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they used the list of registered voters. That's good. They said it was registered voters, so they kept in people who weren't motivated to vote.
Yep.
But the questionnaire, second question, right before the presidential ballot, they said, are you enthusiastic about your choice for president, or are you fearful the other candidate is going to win? What do you think they're talking about with fear?
Yeah.
They're trying to offset the Trump enthusiasm gap so Biden would be ahead in some of these polls. That is bias. They used PhDs to structure their polls. They knew exactly what they were doing. That is absolute bias, and thank God they put it out so we could see it, but they're not telling anybody about it, and their commentators who are sympathetic to us on Fox News can't talk about it because Fox News won't let them go on the air if they trash their biased polls.
Right.
And it's because never Trumpers in the polls. So it's tragic what's going on right now. But fortunately, we're pushing back, and most Americans and the voters and people like yourself are getting at this what they're doing against the president.
Well, I'm looking at New York Times this morning. Is Trump toast? The 2020 election may already be over. So you already have that liberal spin that's going to be out there. They're basically, the election to them 5 months away is fait accompli, which was the exact same thing it was. The president hadn't even received the nomination in Cleveland, and it was already over. Right? I mean, this is a classic media sensationalistic spin. They love to tell people that elections are already over, and they put out these polls that essentially confirm or validate their bogus claim. I actually have Real Clear Politics open because I wanted to run through, this basic spread that they put out. I know John McIntyre from Real Clear Politics. He's an awesome guy, and for the listeners, he's the website simply just aggregates all of this polling information and then puts out an average, right? So they're essentially like Drudge. They're just an aggregator, and they're a great aggregator. So I'm looking at on the side here. It says the national average, Biden is up 9.4%. In Florida, he's up 6.4%. Pennsylvania, 7.7 Wisconsin 6.5. North Carolina, he's up 3%. Arizona, he's up 6%. So, if you take all of that at face value, it's an electoral landslide.
Can you tell me, since you're looking at it right now and I'm not at my computer, can you tell me how many of those polls have LV next to it, meaning likely voter?
Well, let's click on Florida and dive in here.
So that was screened that they're actually a likely voter who's going to vote. How likely are you going to vote? The best polls will take out people that say no. Why poll them? They're not going to vote, and that's where they pollute. They pollute these polls with not Trump supporters and people who aren't Republicans.
Yeah, it's almost all registered voters. I just pulled up Wisconsin for our listeners, and I want to, their average again. Biden's up 6.5%. The Marquette poll, which is a university in Wisconsin, is of registered voters, 805 registered voters. Biden's up 8 points. New York Times put out a poll, 655 registered voters. Biden up 11. Trafalgar Group, which is a more R-leaning group, but they did of 1,021 likely voters, and Trump's up. So,
but hold it, you just said the magic word, likely voters.
Likely voters.
So if they take out the non-voters, it's a very close race. And what they're doing is they're doing this on purpose to sandbag us. Mm-hmm. And they did it 4 years ago to say we couldn't win, and they didn't take us seriously. They were drinking their own Kool-Aid. This time around, they're really trying to do it to suppress our vote, because they're going to keep this track going from now until the election day, and we know it. So we're going to run like the underdogs, just like we did 4 years ago. That we were going to, you were part of it. We're going to every 5-6 states a day.
Oh, it was amazing.
The president thought he was going from 6 a.m. to midnight every day, trying to win the election. And the Democrats, Hillary's doing 1 or 2 cities because, we're going to win. They're buying fireworks in New York City for their victory celebration. It's like, so now you see this, and they're trying it again. And the scary part is, just to ensure that that in case this type of voter suppression doesn't work, they're taking down all the voter ID laws so that they can commit fraud by letting non-citizens or dead people or whatever ballot harvesting go on, so they can bring in illegal ballots and take away people's rights to vote. It's a crime, and we've got to stand up to it and fight it.
You mentioned, Hillary Clinton doing 1 to 2 rallies a day. That's, being very generous. Joe Biden, though, he doesn't do virtually anything.
No.
I think he's in his basement right now. Hopefully he's tuning in.
You mean China, Joe?
Yeah.
The guy who attacked us yesterday for coronavirus, but didn't want to shut the travel down to China and said we were xenophobic because of it?
Well,
I mean, come on.
He also thinks 120 million people died of coronavirus. So
right.
I think we have to give him a little bit of slack.
No, but the thing is, he basically, I mean, when you think that at the end of January, when President Trump shut down travel to and from China, he attacked us.
I know he
didn't need to do that. So, I mean, he's fatal. And the media forgot that too. They've all got dementia about that issue right now. So it's unbelievable. But we got to remind them, and we will.
Exactly. So I want to, with the last 10 minutes we have here, there's obviously, I think that there's about 17 battleground states. I wanted to get your opinion and your sense for the voters, and then if we have time, I'd love to cover the Senate as well. Of those 17, and that's states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, that's the Rust Belt. Then we have North Carolina, hopefully Virginia, Georgia, Arizona, Texas. I mean, where do you think what's actually a swing state? What are we? How do we get to 270? How do you think? What's the best path to 270? Because that's all this is. It's just math.
Right.
And then where do you think is more of a reach? Where do you see? Where have you seen numbers change? You're the numbers guy, so walk our listeners through the numbers.
Well, I think we can take nothing for granted. I mean, a couple days before Christmas in 2016, the president called me and said, because we're old friends from New York, and I was encouraging him to run in 2011, 2012. He was going to run, and he decided not to. We had spent a month writing a campaign plan for him, and he just didn't feel the time was right. So all of a sudden in 2015, Corey Lewandowski calls me up and says, because I had introduced him to Trump in 2011 because he was going to run New Hampshire for him. He says, guess what? I'm the campaign manager, and he's going to run. I'm like, that's great. So I've known him for a while, but in 2016, he calls me up 2 days before the election, 2 days before Christmas after the election. Just says, John, I got to say thank you. It's great. Wish you Merry Christmas, et cetera. It was a huge win. I said, well, Mr. President, at least we didn't make you pay for a landslide. And he says, what do you mean? I said, well, you only won by 78,000 votes out of 139 million. It was 46,000 in Pennsylvania, 22,000 in Wisconsin, 10,000 in Michigan. And he says, yeah, but it was a great electoral victory. And I said, no, Obama had more electoral votes when he first got elected, but you won decisively as 306. So you hear the silence on the phone. And I said, Mr. President, it was a historic win that you beat the Republican establishment and went on to beat the national establishment. No one has ever done it since maybe Andrew Jackson. And he realized how close the election was. And that's what we have to think in our heads right now. We want a very close election we weren't supposed to win. So looking at the electoral states right now, and we did it by broadening the map and going after states that we won closely. So without a doubt, we won Florida by 1% of the vote. We got to win Florida again. And
Yep.
by the way, we may win Florida more decisively this time because a lot of people are leaving other states where taxes and crime are too high and rioting and looting going on. They're moving to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So Florida, we have to win. States like North Carolina, Pennsylvania, very close states right now. We need to win those. And we didn't win them by much last time, particularly Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania, by the way, Joe Biden is going there talking about shutting down the shale industry, talking about shutting down the coal industry. There will be hundreds of thousands of people affected by that in Pennsylvania. Those jobs will never come back. And in Philadelphia, they had all this rioting and looting that was underreported. People in the Philly suburbs are particularly scared about feeling safe right now.
Yeah.
So those two states become really important. By the way, and Ohio and Iowa are a little bit of a play right now, but we won those decisively last time. We need to do so again. Wisconsin is always an even battle between the two parties, whether it's a statewide election there or whether it's a presidential election. They're pretty close, but President Trump was able to do what Republicans hadn't done in decades and win Wisconsin. But Wisconsin's going to be in play, as that Trafalgar poll showed with, in spite of Marquette or whatever, the likely voter poll showed it's always going to be close between now and election day.
Yeah.
And Texas will win. I mean, we'll win decisively. That's in this battleground state play. Georgia will be close because the governor's race was close last time. And the demographics of the state, I used to work for Governor Deal there, and he won decisively his reelection in 2014. And I told him we made it look easy. It's actually two parties are in alignment right now, and it used to be a state where the Republicans had a 4-3 edge. So there's plenty of battlefields. Plus, we're looking to broaden the battlegrounds by going. We are going to try to win Nevada, which we didn't win last time. New Hampshire, which we didn't win last time. Minnesota, New Mexico, Colorado. I mean, there are states that we didn't win last time that we're going for. The one state that we barely won last time, Michigan, 10,000 vote margin, they were hit heavily by this coronavirus shutdown where you have over 20% unemployment now.
And their governor's done a just disastrous job.
Right, but it's a Democrat state. In the exit polls in 2016, there was significantly more Democrats than Republicans. We were fortunate to win the state. We were fortunate Hillary ignored it. This time around, the Democrats are not ignoring it. It's going to be a tough state to win. But President Trump has brought 17 automobile factories and manufacturers back to Michigan that would have been gone. And we need to remind them of that and tell them about their future. If they want to go back to work, really depends on Donald Trump being reelected as president, not Joe Biden, who will sell us out to China, or will just, let Pelosi and Schumer raise taxes. He's so weak. I mean, he's going to be owned by the radical left, and it's scary. I mean, AOC dictating the Green New Deal. The last thing I want is her, that rocket scientist, telling me when I can take an airplane or when I can drive. I mean, it would just be a total disaster.
Unmitigated. Now,
Yeah.
I want to mention two states. We have 2 minutes left. So Minnesota, in 2016, I always actually maintained that it was a winnable state, and I think we came within 45,000 votes.
Yeah.
Do you see that trending in which direction? Minneapolis has been a disaster. Just it's caving in on itself. And then Arizona. So just those two states left, because I'm seeing Arizona. I think it's moving away from us with the election of Kristen Sinema. Martha McSally, for some reason, has always struggled as a statewide candidate. What do you make of it?
Well, I don't think. I mean, President Trump is doing better. And we don't release our internal polls, but he's doing better in Arizona, and we're going to win that state. People there are happy that he built the wall. McSally has a tough opponent. The Senate race is a different story, and because the difference is a lot of Trump supporters look at McSally as an establishment candidate, so that's why she has trouble with that. And Kirsten Sinema, she ran to the right 2 years ago. The Republicans didn't have a message, and Trump wasn't on the ballot.
Right.
So I think I'm more optimistic about Arizona right now, and and it's still going to be a tough fight. But we're in a tough fight between now and the election. I mean, look at what's going on around the country. Talking about defund the police. Minnesota, we don't have a handle on until things settle down there. But I would, if I lived in Minnesota, they're disbanding the Minneapolis police. I mean, I'll bet you a lot of Minnesotans are not going into downtown Minneapolis or St. Paul these days. And that's a scary prospect, not just for the people of that state, but also for the country. And New York City, they're taking $1 billion from the police, and it's unbelievable. You have potential riots every night, and this kind of lawlessness, and you have criminals back on the street. The shootings have more than doubled since last year. The murders have more than doubled. It's a scary situation, and if you want to be safe in your homes and in your communities, there's only one choice for president, because, I mean, Biden doesn't leave his basement.
No.
So,
and when he does, he has these disastrous press conferences and news conferences where it's almost sad to watch. Almost, I have to couch that. You mentioned so many, brilliant things there. Minneapolis, Minnesota as a whole is kind of broken into two parts of the state, right? There's the southern part, and then the northern part, which is that Iron Belt. They're a very conservative, maybe blue dog Democrat, but very much a Trump voter. And I think that people are kind of terrified at the moment. You had 3 members of the Minneapolis City Council that voted to defund the police. They're now being trailed by private security to the tune of $3,500 a day. It's just wild. John, we actually ran out of time. This was so much fun talking to you. Thanks so much for joining me.
I look forward to seeing you in person very soon. It's
Yeah.
going to be we got a really exciting long-fought campaign where Trump is the underdog again, and if anybody's discounting us, it's a big mistake.